Mr. President, as a small archipelagic state, we, more than most, are affected and threatened by the ravages of climate change. We, more than most, recognize the critical importance of a meaningful, measurable, and enforceable global compact on climate change. However, we do not simply want to, quote, seal the deal at Copenhagen, as posited by the sloganeers at the United Nations. We want to seal the right deal, the just deal, and the deal that ensures our continued survival. We most emphatically will not seal a suicide pact that will assure the elimination of small island states and our way of life. The Alliance of Small Island States has recently issued a declaration that contains what we consider to be the essential contours of any meaningful agreement on climate change. We trust that our blameless position on the front lines of climate change fallout will be considered and respected in the global effort to seal the deal. We cannot, as in the case of the world economy, be excluded in any way from the solutions to a problem that so fundamentally affect us. Mr. President, the theme of exclusion is equally applicable to our friends in Taiwan. The United Nations and its specialized agencies must find ways to ensure the meaningful participation of the 23 million people of Taiwan. Just as their economic strength has merited inclusion in the WTO, and the universality of global health challenges have logically compelled their participation in the World Health Assembly, so too should the global reach of climate change merit their meaningful participation in the UNFCCC. The interconnectedness of global air travel and our shared safety concerns similarly mandates the participation of Taiwan in the International Civil Aviation Authority. The government and people of Taiwan have advanced a reasonable and responsible policy of engagement to usher in a new era in cross-strait relations. The international community can and should encourage and reward this fledgling rapprochement with meaningful participation in the relevant specialized agencies. Mr. President, any cursory analysis of the excluded and the included, of the discontented and the defenders of the status quo, will quickly reveal that many current inequities are rooted in our colonial history, and that the struggle for geopolitical balance and inclusiveness is indeed the last struggle of decolonization, as we, the former colonial territories, remain excluded from the inner sanctums and power structures that were established by and for the colonizers in a time long since past. On 27th October this year, Saint Vincent and the Grenadines will celebrate her 30th anniversary of independence. However, we recognize that independence is a process, not a one-time event. Our independence journey continues today. 30 years after our formal independence, we retain the Queen as our head of state, and our highest judicial appeals travel from our shores to the United Kingdom to be decided by Her Majesty in Council. While we cherish a special, modern, and respectful relationship with the United Kingdom, we do not intend to tarry on colonial premises a moment longer than is necessary. Even as we wage a wider war of attrition against geopolitical colonialism, our citizens are preparing to vote on a new and homegrown constitution that will break the chains of outmoded dependence and place St. Vincent and the Grenadines firmly on her 2 feet as a truly independent republic. This new proposed constitution, the product of 6 years of open, transparent, inclusive public consultations, is testament to the political maturity of our people and the value of locally tailored solutions to externally imposed impediments. In a similar manner, our brothers and sisters in the developing world, including Cuba, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Turkey, Mexico, Malaysia, Iran, Libya, Brazil, and many others, have forged new links and bonds of friendship, cooperation, and solidarity with our country that go beyond historical, geographical, or colonial linkages. We value these friendships and partnerships as important additions to our traditional and treasured allies in the United States, the United Kingdom, Taiwan, Canada, and the European Union. Just as our myriad bilateral friendships and partnerships span geographic, economic, and ideological divides, so too must our multilateral cooperation be inclusive and participatory. We can no longer maintain the illusion of holding hands in artificial solidarity across the moats and turrets of structural and systemic inequalities. Modern multilateralism cannot proceed on the basis of the included and the excluded. of the political haves and have-nots, nor can token assimilations of individual developing countries serve to mask the necessity for deep structural changes to existing power arrangements. We urge our brothers and sisters who have gained limited access to the halls of power to not only be a voice for their excluded brothers, to not only remember where they came from, but to also view themselves as the tip of the spear, the thin edge of the wedge, that will use their newfound privileges to dismantle these structures from within, even as we continue to make our presence felt outside the citadels of stasis and indifference. Psalm 118 of the Bible teaches that the stone that the builder refused shall be the head cornerstone. We, the poor and developing countries of the world, are the stones that the builders of this body refused and ignored. In rebuilding and revitalizing, we will either become the cornerstones of this institution, or this edifice of multilateral cooperation will crumble into irrelevance and illegitimacy. Addressing the economic crisis, poverty, and development is not an academic exercise. Climate change is not a theoretical event. Reform of global governance is not a diplomatic parlor game. They are the clear and present dangers of our time, and they reflect the need for real and inclusive participation of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, the Caribbean, and the developing world. They represent also a need to reflect and address our discontent with the status quo perpetuated for far too long. Mr. President, we stand now in the autumn of our discontent. But, as Gandhi said, and I quote, "Healthy discontent is the prelude to progress," unquote. The challenge of the discontented is to rise above ancient animosities and artificial balkanization to achieve the clarity of vision, the unity of purpose, the political will to finally and successfully storm the castles of stagnation and status quo and drive our peoples, our politics, and our planet into a new era of genuine inclusiveness, equity, and meaningful people-centered progress. Mr. President, I thank you very much.